Welcome to It's a Privilege podcast, where we explore the possibilities of our own privilege. This is part 2 on the privilege of choice. We strongly recommend for you to go back and listen to part 1 to get the full story. On today's episode, our special guest is Dr. John Francis, the Planet Walker. He chose to not speak for 17 years and not ride a motorized vehicle for 22 years. Why? Well, I guess you're going to have to stick around and find out. I also have the privilege of having 2 wonderful co-hosts. Dr. Seria Chatters, a TEDx speaker and a mental health and wellness expert, and Brandon Rhodes, a gamer, improviser, and DEI director at Happy Valley Improv. What can you expect? First, our crew is going to dive deeper into the concepts of the privilege of choice, and then we'll get into the QAP, questions, answers, and privilege with Dr. Francis to further explore the nuance of his choices. We just finished watching The Privileged Perspective with Dr. Francis. Let's see where that conversation takes us. All right, everybody, welcome back to It's a Privilege. We just heard from Dr. John Francis, the Planet Walker. What were your thoughts? There's so much to unpack in that story about choice. What did you hear that resonated with you?
I was just thinking of all the choices made along the way, like in a single day. If you're just traveling from one side of the country to the other, like how many choices has he been into? Was that the only thought of getting into a big rig? Oh, it was on that day.
Oh, you mean like how many times was he tempted?
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
how many times, like how many interactions did he have in a day? How many times were passersby saying, should I pick him up? Should I not?
Yeah.
Do I know this stranger? Hitchhiking could be a lot of dangerous situations.
Yeah. And the assumptions that we make when we see people walking, that it's not their choice to walk, right? That typically when we see people walking along the side of the road, it's that if they could get a ride, they would, because we all must want to ride, right? We don't want to walk. And so that's, that's really interesting of the choices, not thinking about the choices that people are making when they're seeing him. What resonated with me as well is just the timeline that he outlined of late 60s, then the 70s, and then thinking about what was going on in the United States around that time.
Yeah.
And how he said he eventually made it to the East Coast. But something that I had not thought about until watching him speak as well is how there was a lot of issues, and still are, around civil rights across the United States, but how a lot of the major issues were centralized, which I hadn't thought about because we always think about the South,
Yeah.
but we don't think Southeast. We
Yeah.
think South, right?
Yeah, that's true.
But if you think about it, there's a difference in the way that these types of issues were likely manifesting themselves in Nevada, Arizona, New Mexico versus Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana, and how even if you look at the distribution of sundown towns, for example, would be different if he had started on the East Coast in that timeline. The choices that he made and how he decided that this is what he wanted to do. And then also hearing about his mother's concern for his safety, and maybe how his choices may be the same or different if the place where he originated was different.
I think it's
Yeah.
interesting that you're focusing on this idea of 2 things. You're focusing on safety and you're focusing on temptation. And it's interesting how after his emphasis on the revelations found that we have a tendency to still focus on all the things that prevent us from having the choice in the first place. So if and his biggest thing was like, while I was going through this, now he didn't mention this, but I know from his backstory, like he stayed with various people. He would just go to various people's homes and stay with them. And in those spaces, yes, it can be considered very dangerous. And there's so many reasons why when we make decisions that we use, our decision matrix is often built on Maslow's hierarchy of needs of safety. But in his choice, he saw something past that, was able to say, I'm choosing something in spite of this, in search of something else. And there's something beautiful in that, but it's really fascinating. We still cling to, oh, that's scary. Oh, that temptation, boy. Like, why do you think that is?
I'm curious how this affected his spirituality. He might not be religious, but we often use fasting as a way to connect on a deeper level. I wonder if that was a spiritual thing for him.
Mm,
Even if he wasn't religious, I wonder if it affected him in a like a more deeper state.
yeah.
So, was it the reason why he made the choice, or was it the outcome? Does it matter?
I think being tempted to get into the big rig and then not doing it. Or no, there was a sign. It was a sign
Yeah,
that
because he
said, yeah, he
chose.
chose to
Right.
do it. But then something, I don't want to pinpoint religion specifically, but
Right. Yes.
spiritualness, he was like, at the end of it, he felt, I wonder how he felt because he seems very calm, has a peace about him. So I wonder how having that one time where he almost faltered and
Hmm.
then staying true to it, I wonder if that just made him feel empowered spiritually.
Or the universe was saying, you're not done yet.
Yeah.
To that point, though, Cheddar, if what is required to feel confident about a choice?
Hmm.
In these moments, even when he faltered, there's a certain level of spirituality that reinforced his dedication and his stubbornness that he said.
Mhm.
But what is necessary to feel comfortable about a choice? Because many times, whether you're a student, whether you're a parent, whether you're a mom, whether you're a friend, or whether you're just in society, the temptation of not making certain choices is very obvious. With social media, we're encouraged to not make certain choices all the time.
Mhm.
So, what is the thing that we need, do you think, as humans to say, I feel comfortable making this choice and I'm going to stick with it, even though if I hear from other people that I should choose differently?
Hmm.
He said it there. He said the clouds parted up, it stopped raining, and it was that validation. Like he felt validated, pursued.
In that case, Dr. Francis was validated externally,
Mhm.
spiritually.
Mhm.
Do we need validation? Is that the answer? Validation in order for us to feel comfortable, even if it's from another human being?
I think it is at some part. There's somebody needs to be there to say you're doing the right thing. If it might
Mm,
be a physical person or might be a sign that you perceive as this is right.
Or internal
Yeah.
as well, because I think in the field of counseling, we talk to our burgeoning counselors or clinicians, we talk about the importance of also feeling your gut, right? What is your
Mhm.
gut telling you about this scenario? Because sometimes you're not getting external validation and you're not going to get external validation. I don't know about validation though, and I don't know about the concept of comfort as well
okay.
with choices, because I think that sometimes you could be extremely uncomfortable in a choice that you are making. I'll even say, for example, because when we talk about the sense of safety, I think about even the difference of individuals who externally to other people, they perceive you as female or if they perceive you as male, right? I like walking around at night. I love the feel of being outside at night. I love walking around in the city at night. I loved walking around campus at night. Although I love those things, there are also, which I learned, especially as an undergrad at night, that I felt great and I love that feeling. However, there were also other people who chose to
Mm,
make that time at night a time that they would want to attempt to assault me.
mm,
So the thing is that sometimes we may not want to think about, because there are a lot of things that if it wasn't for, I think there's real and then there's perceived. So I'll say that some people could say you have a perception that you are not safe. But when you try to sometimes do something because of your love of it, right? I want to do this. It's one of those things where sometimes external forces and factors remind you
Mhm.
that they exist. So I appreciate what he did and what he continues to do. And I have a feeling that along his journey, he also came face to face with things that reminded him that he was not safe.
yeah.
I think he was uncomfortable at times and still at the same time continued to make that choice. I have a feeling he came up across a number of things.
Yeah, I would imagine
And
too.
so
Yeah.
he wasn't, I don't think it's comfort necessarily. I'm not sure about even validation necessarily, because sometimes validation may be absent or at least external.
Okay.
Maybe it's that internal validation that you have to where you feel that although I'm scared, I have this statement typically say, I say, hey, if you're scared to do it scared because it needs to be done, kind of a thing. Maybe he was scared. I'd love to hear more about his journey. But it was just that I'm just going to continue to keep putting one foot in front of the other until I get through this feeling of discomfort, until I get through this feeling of fear. And then I will eventually get to a place to where I'm okay again.
Okay.
Fear,
So,
fear is very powerful. I wonder what was going on in that mental tug of war he had
yes.
between the fear and the ability to continue walking it.
But I feel like this is while his adventure and choice making seems extreme from our point of view, I feel like these things that we're talking about are almost inherent with every choice that we make, especially if they are not exactly the way the society wants us to go. If we deviate in any particular way, especially if we deviate in any particular way, then we get those pressures from the outside. Or if we deviate from how society functions, like being able to walk around at night, society functions in a way that unfortunately predators operate statistically in these spaces. Well, then
Right.
you have to accommodate for them. So whenever we deviate or we want to break into a space where the world or society hops into, all of these factors exist. It could be a simple choice of just saying, hey, I want to go and apply for college because I'm the first one in my family to do so.
Right.
All of these things, that all the fears, all of the current worries about validation, all of these things exist in that space. Is there something that we can hold on to or encourage to give to somebody else in this space that might need that extra? In my mind, I hope that it's validation, which means I have a power to help somebody else make a choice, right? What else can we do to help others make choices in the face of all of this difficulty?
So I think I probably need to clarify what I meant where I said that I don't necessarily think it's validation, because I think that there are people that exist that they probably could not identify an external validation, or even inside of them, they were more in touch with the fear than they were in touch with a sense of confidence, right? That I
Okay.
can move forward. However, I do think validation plays a part, because I think that if I didn't think that, it would be hard to even sit in any of the roles that we sit in, right? So if I
Mm.
didn't think that validation was a part, then why am I associate vice provost right now in educational equity? Why do I sit down and meet with students? We are currently going through what we call our appeal season, where students, due to their grade point average and or credit hours, they're losing scholarships. Some students have lost full ride
Mm.
scholarships. My name goes on that letter that tells that student that I'm not renewing your scholarship.
Ah.
I'm meeting with students right now, which is why my schedule is so chaotic. And I'm having a student come to me saying, you have now taken my full ride. And what am I supposed to do about this? And I have to talk to that student and say, you didn't meet the requirements of this scholarship. However, there are still, and mind you, these are not students that we said, hey, one and done. This is a student that they were not meeting a year ago. We notified them of it. There are lots of resources, supports that were poured in over the year. And for whatever reason, still now they have not made the grade. They have not made
Right.
that piece. So now, so if I didn't believe in validation, if I didn't believe in those things and trying to support a student and give a student hope in moving forward, then, but I'm just saying that I have a feeling that individuals like Dr. Francis here and others probably may have made some choices and moved forward even when they could not find that confidence, that validation. Because I think that having external and internal senses of validation is privilege at times.
Would we call in a survival scenario, when you have survived an event and you feel that, is that a form of validation or is that something else?
So
Surviving the thing that you're fearful of.
be a
Yeah.
little bit more specific. Give me something tangible. So surviving what?
We can go back to your example of just walking at night. You've made it home.
Yes. Yeah.
You've walked, you've made it home. Maybe you've seen a couple people that are walking around with hoods up and you're like,
Mhm.
I'm not sure. I don't know if I'm going to make it out of this situation, but you make it home.
Mhm.
Just knowing that you've made it home and you're on the other side of that fearful, that stressful moment, is that validation enough to
Do it
do
again.
it again?
And I think that also happened to Dr. Francis, right? He went to certain houses and he had certain experiences and he had to push through it and say, I made that out. I'm okay. He had a really tough night with the rain coming down. And he's like, I'm cold. This is terrible. What am I going to do? And then he got out of it, which gave him the resolve to keep moving forward. If you can get to that part where you're even making it through that difficulty, that has to be validating enough to say, I can do it. You can. You already did it. It means you can do it again, which makes it potentially easier to make a choice in that similar vein. How does survival, temptation, and validation impact the choices that we make? Let's dig into Q, A, and P, and let's check back in with Dr. Francis to see what he has to say. It's a privilege to have you on the show, Dr. Francis.
Thanks, Jason. It's a privilege to be here as well.
Every day might be different, but what are 3 privileges that you're feeling today? It could be anything. It could be the fact that it's a beautiful day outside, that you're breathing. Just what are 3 privileges that you're feeling today?
I think the first privilege is having a family and being here in Cape May with my family. The next privilege is having the health to be able to walk and be with you here today. And the next privilege is, I think, just being able to do the things that I do, like to travel to Africa, to get in a plane and fly and be in another continent and to walk and be with the people in that continent and learn about them and share their lives and to be able to share that with all of you. It's the most amazing privilege. I could keep going on. 3 privileges, is that enough?
As absolutely plenty. You've made the very profound choice in your life to not talk for 17 years and not take motorized vehicles for 22 years. Many folks go through their lives thinking they have a limited set of choices. What is your perspective on the choices we have in life?
The first choice that we have is to just find that person who you are. Just only you. There's a unique you. There's nobody else, not like being John Francis or not like being Jason Brown. We are each our own person, and find that person. That's the person that we want you to be, that you need to be, that the world needs. We all need you.
Wonderful. It seemed like you felt like the world needed you to be you when you made some of the choices you did when you were younger, like the ones that we've mentioned so far. But you also mentioned that people looked at you like in a weird way, almost as if you were crazy to make the choices that you felt were right for you. What did it feel like to have that judgment placed on you, and how did you get past that?
Yeah. When people say, oh, you're crazy for being who you are, it's almost like a badge of honor or a test. You have to appreciate that life has put in front of you an obstacle or a criticism so that you can learn from. I think it's important to take it that way so that we don't, I don't like you for being critical of me. No, I really like you for being critical of me because without your criticism, I wouldn't know where it is I am and how it is I need to change or not. All the criticism became like people who were angels sent to say, okay, you should do this now. And I go, no, I'm not going to do that. Or I'm going to do this because this is who I am. This is what it feels like for me. Accept those criticism and we still love those people that can still love them and still treat them with kindness.
The last question I think is going to be something like, some might consider you less privileged because of the choices that you made, the lack of ability, the lack of access. What is the beauty of making choices that might appear to be difficult?
As I have made these choices in the beginning of this journey to not ride in cars, to not speak, to continue to walk, one of the things that I discovered is that you can discover things that you had not imagined
Mm,
because it's everybody's going this way and everybody's seeing this, but you're actually rediscovering and discovering new possibilities.
right.
It's fine to have the technology, but just as rewarding and just as important for us to decompress and understand what nature is as purely as we can. The choices are like I could stay and just be walking and not talking, but that
Yeah.
ended. I got to a place where now my choice is it's time for me to ride in motorized vehicles and still appreciate walking and not talking. It's time for me
Yeah.
to start speaking and still appreciate what I learned about life and each other and listening and communication. All of those things are important. As my dad, when he would follow me as I graduated from college to college, he would say, your mom and I are really proud of you for graduating here at Southern Oregon State College. It's wonderful. What are you going to do with a bachelor's degree? You're going to have to ride in cars and talk. I would get to Montana and he would say, listen, don't think we're not proud of you for getting a master's degree. You didn't ask us for money or anything. But what are you going to do with a master's degree if you don't ride in cars and talk? And then I got to the University of Wisconsin and my dad shows up and he says, look, my sister said I should leave you alone because you're doing so well without saying anything. PhDs are a dime a dozen. What are you going to do with a PhD if you don't ride in cars and talk? And so when I started speaking in Washington on the 20th anniversary of Earth Day, my dad said, that's one. And when I came home in Christmas, my dad said, this is the happiest Christmas of my life.
That's a beautiful way to tie everything back together is the family and the one and the two. And again, some people would be like, you're a black man in the United States choosing to not talk or drive. You're putting a lot stacked up against you, but you found a way to thrive and be connected in a way that is really beautiful. And even in the face of all of that, you found the humanity in these pieces. And that's a really beautiful thing. And it's really difficult because a lot of folks would be like, none of this can happen because of the things of the privileges that you have. And you were like, nah, you can. You just got to plan a walk. You just got to plan a walk. On this note, Dr. Francis, it's been a privilege to have you with me. We end the show in the same way every single time. The three foundational themes of using your privilege in this world, we think of it in three ways. First, know your privilege. Second, use your privilege to help yourself. Then third, use your privilege to help others. After this chat, how are you going to do those three things? It can be pretty quick if you want it to be.
Knowing the privilege, I think, is just being able to make a choice. If you can make a choice, that's a privilege. You're free to make a choice. That's a privilege. And the next one is, how are you going to use this privilege to help yourself? For me, if you can discover who you are and be that person, that's a privilege. And how is this privilege going to help all of
Yeah.
being who you are? That privilege is going to help all of us because we don't want you to be anyone but who you are.
Where can people find you to just follow you on your journeys all through Africa, Dr. Francis?
You can find me at planetwalk.org. And I'm sure on Facebook and Instagram and all those other things.
Oh, Dr. Francis, I appreciate you to be here today. It's been a privilege to chat with you, to learn from you, to be humble, and to appreciate humanity through your eyes, and especially make the choice to be here to hang out. So thank you so very much.
Peace.
With that last bit of insight from Dr. Francis, what jumped out to you? How does this all relate back to our conversation?
That was very sweet. Just that end part, getting that love from his father in the end. I just wanted to say that it was very touching.
Right, but the choices that he made, it like goes back to what we were talking about. He didn't
Mhm.
get validation from his father,
Mhm.
and then it wasn't until the very end, after he was able to get through all of it, that he risked all of that not validation for those really beautiful moments at the end. And because it worked out, it feels like a really wonderful story. But his choice also could have ended in the opposite direction.
Mhm. I, I see the end part as a reward,
Hmm,
just getting those compliments as a reward,
hmm.
saying you need a car and you need to talk. I see that as a form of maybe not validation, but just a factor to encourage him to keep his resolve.
Oh, so
Like,
my dad has a really weird way of encouraging me to do things. You think it's just like that dad way of encouragement? It's a little bit of like tough love, but it's also meant to be encouraging. Is that what you're saying?
yeah, if somebody comes to me and says, "No, Brandon, don't do that," why not do that? Because you're going to cause physical or harmful damage
Yeah.
for me. I'm like, okay, all right, I won't do it.
And that kind of aligns with it sounds like with what the conversation with his dad, because his dad didn't outline any kind of actual harm that was happening
Mhm.
because of the fact that he wasn't talking. And with the dad continuously saying, "How are you going to get your master's? How are you going to get your PhD?" He did,
Yeah.
right? He was able to do it without talking. So even those perceived threats from the dad's perspective, right? They weren't real threats for him.
Yeah.
And some kids, even though it's hard to say kid in his perspective, seeing his age, but he's his father's child,
Mm,
are motivated to do things that their parents say that they can't do.
Yeah.
So there's that validation again, right? That internal motivation. Like dad says, I can't do it. I'm not only going to do it, I'm going to walk there and I'm going to do that. Now, dad, and dad is still, what about this? Sometimes because your parents say you can't do it, you feel motivated to do it.
forms, even if it appears to be negative, it's oh, you just
Absolutely.
fueled the flames, my friend.
Yep.
Dad, you just got me in the mode. Yeah, I
Yep.
can totally see that. One of the other things he mentioned was this idea of self confidence
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
a strong self identity. He's like, if you know it inside, you're able to almost do it. So, can you make difficult choices without validation and with limited self confidence?
No.
No, no, can't do.
And I don't know, what is a difficult choice? Would be my question, because for some, just going to the mental health world, which we talk to our students a lot of the time when they're trying to get validation from their client that they're doing the right thing as a therapist. So they may try to find that validation in the choices that their client makes or doesn't make. And what we try to help them to see is that sometimes you have to change your mindset regarding what you consider to be difficult.
Mhm.
Because for a person who is not experiencing a mental health crisis, getting up in the morning, taking a shower, brushing your teeth, fixing yourself breakfast, that's just something that many of us do on autopilot in some
Right.
cases. For a person that's severely depressed, getting up in the morning and just getting out of bed is a difficult choice. Oftentimes, people that are severely depressed, they isolate. But the fact that they got out of bed was a difficult choice for them that morning,
Yeah.
right? With very little motivation because they're
Mhm,
depressed, with
mhm.
very little validation because part of depression is shutting yourself off from that external world. And so, as a therapist, we have to look at the fact that even if they come to counseling and they may smell awful, right? Because they did not have that motivation to be able to take a shower that
No,
day,
no.
brush their teeth, anything. We have to complement that and see that as progress and see that as a difficult choice that was
Mm,
made. So I guess the question is for each of us, difficult choices may be different,
Yeah.
right? I would say, yes, you can make difficult choices with little validation and little motivation because we have people, especially living day to day and even choosing to live with severe depression, that are doing that right now as we speak.
I
one
do remember a TED Talk years back, and they talked about faking it until you own it.
Mhm.
Just
Mhm.
like going through the motions until that is, if you imagine your life being in this place,
Mhm.
just faking these routines until it does become your natural world.
I do want to point out one thing, though, is that when someone shows up in that way to a session with you,
Yeah.
you are validating them into a certain extent of saying, thank you for being
Yes,
like
you're
there's a
here.
certain thing that still is existing there. And it is without that, it becomes more difficult. With
Right.
that, it's easier to come back and hopefully continue that process.
We hope.
So
Yeah.
as we're wrapping up, I want to get the final thoughts from both of you. How do choices relate to each of us when it comes to privilege? Let's start with you.
Wow. So, first of all, it's been a privilege to even be in this conversation because this is a conversation that I think could happen all day. How choices connect with privilege from this conversation and having, this opportunity to even hear some of Dr. Francis's journey is when we were talking earlier about survival, something that came to mind is the choice to thrive because I think that we want individuals to be able to find motivation, validation in surviving? We hope that do.
Mm.
But we hope that I hope that individuals have more opportunities and choices that they can make that put them on a path of being able to thrive. And I think that some individuals have more privilege than others to have many choices in front of them in which they
Mm.
can thrive in many different spaces, where some have many choices that kind of came out of traumatic experiences, survival, things that they had an opportunity to survive through. So I think that that is something that when I think about that privilege and I even think about my kids, my husband and I have this conversation all the time because we think to ourselves, when we see our kids, right? Two boys in college right now, and we think to ourselves, how could they not see all of the choices that are in front of them,
Mm.
right? How could they not see that, hey, my parents work at this university, so they get this discount, right? So I
Mhm.
get the type of university that that they're going to, even though for them they see it as 13th grade because they've lived
Mhm.
here,
Yeah.
they've grown up in state college. How can they not see these amazing choices? And what we've realized is they didn't grow up the way that we did, right? They grew up here in state college. They grew up having access to a lot of the things that neither he or I had access to.
Right.
So, for both of him and I, our stories of survival, right? We have been able to set up a life for our children in which, from our perspective, are thriving. From their perspective, this is a Tuesday.
Yeah. It's a
So
Tuesday.
it's a Tuesday, right? So, like, they're upset because today we didn't get Starbucks, right?
Mhm.
That
Yeah.
kind of thing, right? And
Mhm.
this is like, why did I not get Starbucks today? When for my husband and I, it was a privilege to go to a restaurant
Yep.
for months. Like, it was an exciting thing to get the $1.99 Happy Meal
Yep.
at McDonald's and
Yep.
be able to be allowed to get cheese on your burger
Oh,
because your
never allowed.
mom would say, "No, we're gonna take that burger home and we're gonna slap a slice of the cheese at home," which was
Mhm.
a block of cheese that you would cut with the cheese,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That hard cheese.
Right, the hard cheese, right? When you're So I think that when we think about that privilege, I always have to continuously remind myself that there is some privilege, even though it's born out of coming from a place of survival. There is some privilege also of being aware of choices. So I think Dr. Francis's journey, it probably opened his eyes when he's riding in a car. Many of us take that for granted, right?
Mhm.
It opened his eyes to a lot of things I think that we take for granted every day, which probably makes the tapestry of his existence on a day-to-day basis so much more rich because he's aware of so many things that we just pass by.
You just said tapestry of existence.
Sorry, I didn't even know where that came from.
Yeah, poetic.
Nice.
That was nice. It's like he wrote that before coming
No,
here.
I didn't. I just came out of my mouth.
Quick thoughts, Brendan, before we head on out.
Oh, no, I just wanted to say I love today's episode because I feel like we fully encapsulated choice from the driving factors that make you want to make the choice, the validation you get after it, the overall reward that you get, the fears that are in there that drive those choices. So I thought this was like a very thorough show.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's where we're going to conclude the privilege of choice. Hopefully you've enjoyed the conversation. Hopefully you've enjoyed the stories. Feel free to go to our social media at PrivilegePod on all platforms and let us know some of your thoughts about the possibilities of privilege, especially as it relates to choice. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for sharing. And of course, it's a privilege.